tackling climate change is a duty upon all of us because it's become a reality, like COVID-19. So it's something which impacts the entire planet and all of humanity. But unlike COVID-19, climate change doesn't have a vaccine. We need to embrace this whole community approach, whole society approach, if we want to see the change in society. In the Quran, it says, there's no animal on the earth or any bird that wings its flight, but is a community like you. The community in Islam is not founded on race, nationality, locality, occupation, kinship, or special interests. It doesn't take its name after a name of a leader or a founder or an event. It transcends national borders and political boundaries. The foundation of the community in Islam is the principle which designates submission to the will of Allah, obedience to his law, and commitment to his cause. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a role model who showed us how to live sustainably and simply, respecting the earth and our fellow humanity. He taught us how to consume moderately and avoid wasting precious natural resources, such as water, even if on the banks of a flowing river, Ibn Majah. Now, the notion of a whole society approach was mentioned a lot in Montreal at COP15 last year. COP15, it's not as well known as COP27, which was on climate change in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, but COP15 is the 15th Conference of Parties to the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, which adopted the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, including 4 goals and 23 targets for achievement by 2030. It was hosted in Montreal in December 2022 by Canada and chaired by China. I was there representing the Faith Caucus. It was the first time that we actually had a faith pavilion at, one of these international UN COPs. Now, it's scary to imagine the triple planetary crisis that we're facing. The thought that through the actions of humans today, we're accelerating the rate of species extinction far greater than could have been seen in over the past 10 million years. It's beyond scary. We need to recognize now the interconnectedness of all of us who live on our planet and impact of our actions in the past, the present, and the future. Within religious traditions, including Islam, relations between humans and other elements of the natural world are not compartmentalized, but instead conceived of as being tied into a series of continuous spiritual interactions. Like other faiths, Islam also has many environmental principles and guidelines embedded in our holy book, the Quran, and in the Sunnah, which is the example of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. There's not an animal that lives on the earth, nor a being that flies on its wings, but they form communities like you. Nothing have we omitted from the book, and they all shall be gathered to their Lord in the end. This verse stresses the importance of the ecosystem that is in existence as well as humanity. According to Islam, humans are the caretakers, the stewards of God's earth and creation. In the Quran, he tells us, I'm going to place in the earth a Khalifa, a steward, Quran 2:30. I'd like to also speak to you about how Muslims can support a flourishing future for our planet. The Quran tells us clearly that we need to tame our greed and our want. Whoever desires the harvest of the hereafter, we increase for him in his harvest, and whoever desires the harvest of this world, we give him thereof. But there is not for him in the hereafter any share. What I'd like to do now is just spend a little time exploring how Islam can help us to tackle climate change, biodiversity and nature loss, and pollution. So what are some of the practical actions that we can learn from Islam in promoting biodiversity and tackling climate change? The Blessed Prophet Muhammad didn't like excess in anything. He liked balance, which is the word mizan, which means balance in Arabic. He wanted us to plant trees. Anas bin Malik narrated that Allah's apostle said, there's none amongst the Muslims who can plant a tree or sow seeds, and then a bird or a person or an animal eats from it, but is regarded as a charitable act, a charitable gift. By planting trees, we can, obviously tackle climate change. And then grow tayyib. tayyib means pure, nutritious, and safe food, which is free from pesticides and chemicals. By engaging in Islamic farming, we can ensure that there's an alignment between this world and the hereafter. My organization, Global One, we created a book, a toolkit on Islamic farming, which we then used in both Kenya and Nigeria. And the farmers who used it, what they found was there was a 49% increase in yield, and they weren't using pesticides or fertilizers, chemical fertilizers. They were using rotational crops. They were using, livestock, and then using the manure of the livestock. They were using honeybees, so beehives. So it was like, and then the irrigation system was in place. So it was something which was, for the smallholder farms, and it was giving food for the farmers and their families, as well as being able to sell things in the market. So, in terms of food security, I think it was something that was very significant. The other thing is that feed ourselves with only what everybody needed. So our beloved prophet, he said that the son of Adam doesn't fill any vessel worse than his stomach. It's sufficient for the son of Adam to eat a few mouthfuls to keep him going. If he must do so, fill his stomach, then let him fill 1/3 with food, 1/3 with drink, and 1/3 with air. This was narrated by Al-Tirmidhi. And then look out for our neighbors and our neighbors' needs. With the danger of food and water insecurity looming over us, we need to give a thought to our neighbors who may be struggling to feed their families. And you can see in the UK, in Enfield, we've got so many food banks, so many people now, because of the cost of living crisis, the impact's been enormous. So according to a report given by a Muslim from Anas, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "By the one in whose hand is my soul, no servant truly believes until he likes for his neighbor or his brother what he likes for himself." So, sharing what you have and thinking about your neighbors, I think that's very important. Now, both food and water security are threatened by climate change. We see more floods, droughts, and famine already threatening lives, particularly in the global south. Now, adaptation and mitigation practices need to be really supported financially to give support to the vulnerable communities in the global south. And we're still not seeing that level of, financial support. The finances are there. It's how to draw down those funds and how, politicians can support and help, and international institutions can move forward on this. Islamic principles have both social and political power and can play a major role in helping to resolve water issues and increase awareness of water conservation. The principles are versatile and as such can be utilized across all aspects of environmental studies, and especially that of water conservation and governance. Public awareness campaigns, when enriched with Islamic principles, can be a powerful tool to be employed along with other water conservation policies. So what is the significance of water in Islam? Traditionally, Muslims have had a very close spiritual relationship with water, as have Christians with baptism and others. So they also use it for daily domestic tasks like cooking and drinking, and also performing religious ceremonies as well. The word for water, ma, appears more than 60 times throughout the Quran, as well as other words relating to water, such as rivers, sea, fountains, springs, rain, hail, clouds, and wind. These are all frequent within the Quran. And the theme of water in the Quran is explored both symbolically and at a practical level. What does Islam teach us about water management? Water conservation, as I said, it's very embedded in Islam. It's very common to find Quran and Sunnah statements teaching and defining the correct use of water. Religion plays a big influence on society, and water is a big pivotal role within Islam. Awareness campaigns and water conservation programs, based on religious principles, have proved beneficial and cost-effective in different areas of the Muslim world. Some basic Islamic norms relating to water management are that every human being has a right to drink water to quench his or her thirst to assure their survival. Denying water to someone, asking for it, it's condemned by the Prophet as one of the most disliked acts. Mankind has a priority over access to water, and water belongs to the community, and no one is allowed to own it unless they have had it, to put in their labor and time to access it and distribute it. There's also a right of irrigation, shurb, that permits people to water their crops, but domestic uses, has precedence over agricultural industrial use. Now, what ways can local communities be supported to embed biodiversity? Channels used for Islamic communication should be utilized more as a way of advocating for biodiversity and raising awareness about climate change. I mean, our mosque, Palmers Green, this is, we use that, we have khutbahs. So, more imams need to be trained to pass on the messages during the Friday khutbah, the Friday sermon, about climate change and biodiversity loss. Women cooperatives and community-led organizations should be given more training about it. We need to use more faith-sensitive language, and we need to use language which isn't the scientific language, which goes over so many of our heads. We need language which is for people like myself and yourselves. And we need, the key messaging should also be translated into local languages. And we have platforms. For instance, my organization is part of something called Ummah for Earth. It's a youth climate movement, Islamic climate movement. And, we need to use more platforms like that to really advocate and raise awareness about climate change in the Muslim communities. And also, my organization, Global One, it's a women's organization which is working throughout the world, and it's a trusted partner that can do a lot of work on advocacy. And I think another thing that's really, really important is the engagement of women in this. Especially as they're key caretakers, of their families and caregivers. So that's something that's also important. I know I'm running out of time. So in conclusion, what I'd like to say is that I believe there are three things in which we need to focus if we're to achieve a flourishing future for all of us. Firstly, to acknowledge that our lives on this planet are for a finite time. Our blessed Prophet said it very beautifully. He said, "I'm in this world like a rider who halts in the shade of a tree and after taking some rest, resumes his journey, leaving the tree behind." Secondly, knowledge. Knowledge is key, and the dissemination of that knowledge through advocacy, training workshops, translations, faith-sensitive, in a faith-sensitive manner, will enable the ripple effect to build a faith movement on biodiversity and climate change and nature loss. Narrated Abu Darda, he said, "I heard the Apostle of Allah, peace be upon him, say, if anyone travels on a road in search of knowledge, Allah will cause him to say, will cause him to travel on one of the roads of paradise. The angels will lower their wings in their great pleasure with one who seeks knowledge. The inhabitants of the heavens and the earth and the fish in the deep seas will ask forgiveness for the learned man. The superiority of the learned man over the devout is like that of the moon on the night which it is full over the rest of the stars. The learned are the heirs of the prophets, and the prophets leave neither dinar or dirham or pounds, leaving only knowledge. And he who takes it takes an abundant portion." So thirdly, the importance of community, which I've already highlighted earlier. So I think, what we really need to do is we need to work together and leave no one behind. And I think, the significance of having, your platform, Francis, I think it's very, especially, with the faith and the interfaith and the multi-faith working, at the end of the day, all of us, we're all human. We only have one planet, and we need to work together in harmony. And we need to understand that we have so many shared traditions and values which supersede the differences that we have, and we need to be thinking about that. And I think with COVID-19, what's really been highlighted is that that green reset is something that we need to take advantage of and really work towards. But my fear is that now that we're all coming out of COVID, people are forgetting and going backwards rather than thinking about their own spirituality and about what they as a community what they can give back to the community and how they can work for their community. Thank you.